The economic fallout on Europe from Russian sanctions is clear, but the actions to their own detriment appear to be to the benefit of the U.S., so much so that some have claimed this is a controlled demolition of the European economy. A leaked, unconfirmed document by the Rand Corporation, an American nonprofit global policy think tank financed by the U.S. government, contains a report titled Containment of Germany for the United States and the World, detailing an apparent call to collapse the German economy.
The only feasible way to guarantee Germany's rejection of Russian energy supplies is to involve both sides in the military conflict in Ukraine. Our further actions in this country will inevitably lead to a military response from Russia. Even if the restriction of Russian supplies is limited to 2022, its consequences will last for several years. Not only will it deliver a devastating blow to the German economy, but the entire EU economy will inevitably collapse.
In other words, the U.S. is provoking Russia in order to force Berlin to impose suicidal sanctions via a proxy war. It's worth noting that back in February, before the conflict in Ukraine began, Biden said this when asked what would happen if Russia took military action against Kiev.
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Less than 2 weeks later, Nord Stream 2 was suspended. And since then, it's been downhill for Europe as a whole, but even more damaging for Germany, since it relies heavily on access to Russian energy. The crisis has pushed people to protest their discontent with their government's handling, with some even calling for Nord Stream 2 to be reopened. But America says it's just trying to help.
We're doing everything we can on a liquefied natural gas front to be helpful. And of course, we continue to coordinate on price cap that with respect to Russian oil, which I think can also be helpful.
Yet both Americans and the EU know that the U.S. cannot fulfill all of Europe's LNG needs. There's also a limit to what the EU can receive, given that it doesn't yet have the infrastructure required. And the U.S.-backed price cap will only drive prices up and cut off Europe from cheaper energy supplies. President Putin has already made it abundantly clear Russia will not sell anything to anyone at a bad price.
We will not supply anything at all if it is contrary to our interests. In this case, economic interests. No gas, no oil, no coal, no fuel, nothing.
Critics claim that despite words to the contrary from mainstream media, the U.S. has all along been prioritizing its own economy over those of its closest allies.
If Europe goes into recession, obviously there's less demand for a wide range of products. We're in such a perverse situation here, it can actually be positive.
Trade with Europe accounts for less than 1% of U.S. gross domestic product, and many economists agree that the decline in European consumer demand is unlikely to significantly affect U.S. businesses.
The U.S. economic elite will benefit from the EU's decline, as its LNG exports to the continent have almost doubled since last year. The Rand Corporation report aside, the facts are that Europe's economy is in free fall, while the U.S. defense class is profiting off the entire conflict with Russia via Ukraine. And it doesn't seem to care that it's helping sink the economies of some of its biggest allies. The question of whether this is on purpose remains. But at best, Europe and the U.S. are blind to the effects of their own sanctions. And at worst, they're more than willing to sacrifice the people of Europe for a shaky political outcome.